Hey, what's going on? This is Billy Newman, and you're listening to the Billy Newman Photo Podcast for October 10th, 2017. How's it going? I'm working in the truck this afternoon. I'm trying to put together a quick little podcast as an update to some of the stuff that's been going on, some of the media stuff that I've been working on, and I'm trying to, cover it and explain it. A lot of the time, the podcast is just sort of me updating y'all on what kind of photos I'm working on and what kind of media stuff is keeping me busy, or some of the media thoughts I've had over the week, if I jot them down. I try and keep a little notepad of some little points that I'm supposed to make, but I hardly ever get to them. I don't know, they're about what cameras to look at, that sort of stuff. But we explain enough of it though. So I'm here today. I'm looking at a little list that I wrote down, and I guess it's a bunch of the videos and photo stuff that I've done this past week that's gone up. That'd be kind of cool to talk about. But I cut together a quick little set of video from the Alvord desert during a time out there of us just kind of being able to drive around out on the playa and then kind of walking around and checking out a few of the views, looking back up at the Steens Mountains out toward the east, or looking out toward kind of that flat horizon at sunrise when you're hanging out there, looking out toward the west. But it was really cool. It was fun being there. Kind of like what I maybe had talked about a little bit before was how the weather had turned and had been bad for a bit of the time. It was fine, but just as you would maybe kind of expect as you're getting into the third week of September, the weather just starts to shift a little bit, where you're not really getting consistent nice days, or I don't know, just the odds of getting a nice sunset, sunrise, we just weren't really there for enough time, enough days of the year to really get the opportunity to see that. And I'd heard that another time, I think from a National Geographic photographer who I think was taking photos in the 70s and 80s, perhaps, maybe it was the 90s and 2000s, but it was just sort of an anecdote that they weren't really making a big point of it, but they were just talking about this assignment that they were on. I think it was out in Alaska, maybe it was up in northern Canada, but it was sort of a colder environment, and they were saying that it took them, I think it was 5 days that they just kind of considered in their mind that they were just going to burn in learning the environment, or it's going to take it more than 5 days to complete the photo assignment. It would take at least 3 days just to learn where to go to get the photos, or there's a car going by. But it's kind of a weird sort of obscure point, but the idea is that you would want to have, not just in the idea of odds of something, but in actually your mind understanding the eccentricities and the nuance of a place and being able to capture it is a big part of it. Being able to capture the feeling and the earnestness. Portrait photographers talk about this too, of knowing the person better, having a relationship with the person allows you to get closer, more natural or more real essence of the reflection of a person when you take their portrait. Sort of similarly almost in landscape or in travel photography, the amount of time that you put into understanding your environment or the event, the way that something's going to come about, was sort of part of what these high-level pro photographers would do in understanding how to capture their story. There's lots you can do materially to produce or to create a product of photographs in a much shorter amount of time. But I guess when you're going into developing a photo essay that reflects sort of your deepest level of work, it's really not about the pace of time that you put into it to produce the product. It's about sort of the uniqueness or the artistic expression that's sort of unique to that photographer's vision of what they're trying to produce. It's how close they can get to that. And that really takes more time than it would to just do event photography. It's sort of, if you think about it, it's almost a different level of experience in photography, where one, you're kind of working quickly to capture stuff. And maybe every time you're working quickly, but it seems like there's this higher level of photography where you're really trying to put the best collection of work together, and you're really trying to put enough time into it. So it's really worth something at a high professional level, or at a high meaningful level outside of commercial ability. It's the level of meaning that it has when you're really trying to capture the essence of real life in photojournalism. I think is specifically what we're talking about, not structured commercial shoots for marketing campaigns, but for photojournalism like National Geographic, something like that, where you're imagine going to Mongolia and embedding yourself with a family there and trying to capture their story. If you had 24 hours to do that, you could produce a large amount of media in that much time, and it could be, if you were proficient, it could be professional quality that would adequately provide coverage for the news you're trying to describe. But if you're really putting together, at least back in the day when there used to be budgets for bigger media projects, or for bigger, like single-use media projects, and let's say like a magazine that had a monetized strategy to it, like National Geographic, you could actually send someone to Mongolia, a couple people to Mongolia, one person to write, one person to take photos, one person to produce something else, or a handle, whatever it is. They used to have like a whole team of people, lots of teams of people, freelance people working outside of the country to collect news. It used to be international news. It's just sort of what it was for. We don't really get to do that anymore because the internet's made things so cheap. So now we're in this position where if we were to get a chance to like go to Mongolia, do the coverage on the small family that lives in a tribe in a remote area, and try and kind of cover their story and their landscape and what they have to go through, you'd want more time. You would want more time to kind of experience that. Like you'd want 5 days, you'd want 2 weeks to spend with them, so you kind of learn their rhythm, I guess, is part of it. You learn the rhythm of the land. You acclimate yourself to the area, so you're not bringing a lot of what you ever had out from the outside in. And I guess it's this whole kind of experience of trying to sort of remove yourself from the outside stuff, and sort of find the art that's in the story that you're trying to dig up. And it's just kind of like what it takes to work on something for a long time, and probably any discipline of art or creativity. But it's interesting to hear about how photographers would need to work on stuff for a longer amount of time. So I like the idea of getting to work on photos for a longer set of time. Like try to put together photos, like I guess like out on these trips, like have a week in a spot, or have some amount of time out in a spot and try and take a bunch of photos. But kind of what it talks about when we were talking about the Alvord earlier, and we're talking about the amount of time that we were out there, even though we were there for let's say 3 solid mornings and 3 or 4 solid evenings, what ends up happening is, like, if those 4 days for a landscape photographer, or for landscape photography, if the weather isn't quite right, or if just whatever, strangely, as fleeting of a moment as sunset can be, like it can only happen, sunset and sunrise, it can only happen for a few moments a day, really. Like, okay, let's say on a wide range of it, if the clouds are in the right spots, whatever it might be, it's like maybe 15 minutes a day that you can really get these solid sunsets, maybe longer. Let's say a half hour a day, or a whole hour if we want to say golden hour and blue hour or something like that. You could say there's 2 hours a day to do this type of landscape photography that I'm trying to work on. But if on those couple days, on those couple half-hour segments that seem to come and pass pretty quickly, if the sunset doesn't appear, if there's not an apparition of, whatever kind of cool color, or, whatever kind of different environmental factor or phenomena we're trying to capture, then we don't get it. We don't get to see it. Like, or if an additional environmental factor comes in, like smoke or dust, which is what we got in the Alvord and what we got in Hell's Canyon, then that kind of interferes with stuff too. So I guess ultimately it's just weather sometimes screws up pictures you want to take. And that's why having to spend a lot of time there, like having to live in an environment or live in a place, is really like, that's the way to get the best level of work for photographs or for images out of something, like when you're really familiar with it. And it seems like that in a lot of places you would go, like a lot of travel photography. It seems like it's taken to the place, but not during the season that you would want to go there. Or I've noticed that a couple times, I don't know if that one makes sense, but like I remember, like a beautiful spot up before I started going to the Eagle Cap Wilderness, the Joseph area, the lakes and the mountains and stuff up in northeastern Oregon, and some of the really cool postcard pictures of the landscape picturesque images. They were all taken probably by local whoever was there, but photographers, but in March or April or May, but it was always like during a certain specific time, like when the wildflower bloom would be, or while the grass was still green, and before it had kind of turned into that yellow field that you get by June, July. And so it was just kind of all these really specific things that made it look very picturesque, very beautiful. And it's interesting how you can kind of see those things like, oh yeah, that only happens some days out of the year that it's going to be like that the hills are going to be covered in snow, but that the lake and the grass around the lake is all going to be green, but the water is going to be blue. And so it's all this whole scheme that's sort of been organized and arranged in advance to look good or to look like a fine art image. And I think another fine art photographer that I was reading about, it kind of described fine art photography as capturing a moment at the pinnacle of its greatest beauty or its greatest expression, but capturing a phenomenal moment in a phenomenal environment, like a landscape. The land looks really cool and picturesque out in front of you. You stood or positioned yourself in just the right spot. The heavens above you, the clouds, the light, all are serendipitously really nice. And then some other element like animal, a bird or some other kind of a person, some other kind of additional element is also there serendipitously that can kind of create or bring a moment together to capture it in this fine art system of photography. But that was just this one photographer's kind of take on it. Interesting though, but it was really specific though about how unique and how special it is to really be a photographer, if that is at its root selecting a place and a position to be in at a certain time to get the most amazing or the most beautiful capture of that real experience as you can. And I guess if you are trying to do that in just that single moment, then kind of considering how to be in the moment, how to be at a specific moment, how to kind of capture it and bring it all together all in one piece. That's really what like the fine art photography system is about, or for like the gallery photographers. And I could see where they could really get into that and see like what it is. There's also like, I guess like another side of that outside of fine art would be just sort of the more real, I don't know if it'd be street, but it would just be that photography is about like capturing moments and about sort of the real, more gritty pieces of life. And it's really not about perfecting it or about, I guess, altering the perception of reality to sort of meet some perfect, idealized, imagined sort of piece of imagery. A lot of people do that. Like I push toward surrealism a lot of the time too. But I guess I mean a little different than surrealism. Photography is always about that, about like kind of taking a piece and then amping that up a lot as a photographer. But I don't know, there's a lot of different like kind of avenues and pathways for it. I guess that's why it's an art, and that's why different people and different consciousnesses throughout time have kind of interpreted it differently, which is why it's fascinating, why I have a blast doing it. So it's been cool, but yeah, I posted an Alvord video. It's just a set of clips. It's kind of fun. It's us traveling around. I posted another photo of the Alvord playa with a couple cool colors on it. We brought some cool lights with us that kind of turned a bunch of different colors and stuff. We were just kind of messing around, and we noticed how cool it was, the bright kind of colorful light as it kind of mixed and cast down onto the sort of unitoned color of the playa as it cut across. But it was cool. Posted some of that to Instagram, posted some stuff of our campsites, one of them in Imnaha, one of them in Alvord. I think there's another shot of a campsite that we had up in the Wallowas. Lots of fun stuff. So a lot of stuff like that going on. Oh, man. This story. All right. So outside of the photo stuff, somebody broke my window. I'm pretty sure homeless person in the area. They took like a landscaping paver, like one that would be on the terrace of a little landscaping feature at a house. They picked that up. They went over to my car at the curb. Boom! And they smashed my back passenger side window in. And they stole a little bag out of the back that had nothing in it. It was just empty. But they got that bag. They yanked it out of the back. I lost my window. I got a pretty good sized dent from the concrete on the paver, like bashing into the side of the car. And so, yeah, my car's in the shop. Pretty sweet. Thanks, homeless people. Thanks, vandals, making me report a claim to my insurance. Oy! So, yeah, right now the truck is actually at the body shop, getting some big dents beat out of it, and then getting a window replaced. So, yeah, thanks, homeless people, for taking that productivity and just shattering it on the ground in the street. So that was awesome. It was pretty cool. But really, overall, I'm not too mad about it, and I didn't really lose anything. The worst, or the one that stung me even more was a couple years ago when I had the 4Runner still. They broke into that, and they stole my tripod at the time. I think they stole like my tripod, and they stole, I think, like a some other camera accessory, but I don't know what it was. It was probably like a light stand. It's probably like a light stand. I think it was something like that. Oh, it was a softbox. That was a good softbox too. Yeah, I replaced that one and I replaced the tripod. But yeah, I remember I had the 4Runner and I'd taken all the gear inside and I just had like a couple accessory pieces in the back. Wasn't really in there for very long, but yeah, someone had popped the window on the 4Runner and then I had lost my tripod, lost the softbox. What are they going to do with it? They just pawned it for something that's totally not worth like what, $30. They got whatever. And thanks guys. So that one stung me a lot more than this one for whatever reason, but I guess this is probably more monetarily impactful to you know, the car and whatever. And dealing with insurance. So that's my story. You can check some of my photos out on Instagram. That's at Billy Newman. And you can go to my website. That's billynewmanphoto.com to see more of my images and more of the things that I'm posting. Thanks a lot for checking out this podcast. And you can tune into another one sometime soon. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk again soon.